And hello everyone, welcome back to another Meteor.js tutorial. In this tutorial we are going to be taking it a little bit more chill and be primarily focused on UI and design. Let's start off by just starting our app, opening up Brave, and there we go. So we have our app, we can create a post, we can like, we can delete, whatever we need. So let's make this a little bit dark mode. So let's go here, UI, go to app, just so our eyes do not pop out of our heads from all of the light. So dark algorithm, just save, and this should become dark mode. Kind of, but we'll fix that. So first, let's create a new folder. We'll call it public. And this new folder will contain any public stuff that should be visible from the user's side. For example, this could contain images or files of text or things like that. This should not contain anything that is part of your code that should not be seen by other people, because things in the public folder are public. So we need to be sure that whatever goes in the public folder should be allowed to be visible to all. Now here I'm just going to put my logo in here. This is just something I got out of Pixabay, if I'm not mistaken. And you can put anything you want in here, it does not matter. You can put your own thing in here, I just have this. Just restart your server because sometimes it does not pick up that public has been updated. So we're just going to let this lay here for a while, we'll get back to this in a second. Next up, let's go to our client. And this is the client side, so where all of the basic data goes in. So here you could, for example, put microblogging. And that will, of course, update the title up here to say microblogging whenever you restart your server, I believe. Or refresh, yeah, when you refresh. Alright, then let's go to main.css, and this is just the styling for the whole site. So you don't want to do all of your styling in here. There are other ways to do styling, such as having a CSS file for each component, which is much better. But because this isn't really a styling focused tutorial, we'll only have like one tutorial focused on styling. So we're not going to be doing that. So let's start off by making the padding 0, as well as the margin 0. And this is so once we add a header, it will not have these paddings and margins on the side, and it will just look a little bit better. Then in our app.tsx, here with basic site props, and for now we can just move this to another browser or to another window. Here with the basic site props, we can just also add user profile. And this will also be a mini model. So if we go up here, let's just add export interface mini app user profile model. And it extends the pic user profile model. And we just get the underscore ID, the username, and the photo. Now we want this because we want to customize the website to be more customized to this user. So we want to get their data when we get them, aka their user ID, so if they're logged in. And then we want to take that data that we get and we want to then show it to them on the front end. And then here we just say mini app user profile model. Now, of course, you don't need to get it here. You could get it in one of the children, but it's one of those things that might be used in so many of the children components. Why not fetch it in the big parent component and then pass it down? Then we can create a use state. So use state user profile. And also take note, this is optional. Again, nothing in here really needs to be required unless you specifically need it in every single one of your pages. And this will just be of type mini user profile model or undefined. Because if they're not logged in, then it will never be defined. And we can also just add a loader here. Then here we can go const fetch user profile. And we can say if not user ID, return. Because if there is no user ID, there is no user's profile to fetch. So we just don't fetch the user profile then. We can then add a try catch here, and it will of course end off with an error response. Error as meteor.error could not get user. Then we go, and I just want to copy this. So API, utils, methods, get. This right here, I'm going to copy that and then say await meteor.call async. Throw that in there. And of course we need the data, so const fetch data, which is of type method. Put that there, model, and we can just Pascal case that and import it. Now we want to query the user profile collection, so available collection names dot user profile. The selector would be for the user ID. Just make sure you don't accidentally go selector is user ID, because this will query not the user ID field. So if we go here to the user profile model, it will not query the user ID field, it will query the underscore ID field. These are two very different things, because this is used to specify what this model is. It's a unique identifier. The user ID is saying who this is linked to. So here, we don't want to do this because that will go for the underscore ID. If we do this, we specify we want to fetch for the user ID. Then, of course, we need our fields that we need to select. So we didn't actually define that. So let me just go here, const paste that, make sure this is a small m, and this is fields. Paste that there, and there we go. Then here we can just say options, fields, and specify that. And then finally, we can say only one true, because we don't need to fetch more than one. And if there is more than one, then something's wrong at the code base. So we only want one. Then it will give us a res of type user or mini user profile model or undefined. And we can just say set user profile to res. And we of course need to pass in fetch data, otherwise we will just not get the user data we want. And there we go. And of course at the end you can just return. And this is optional because it won't make a difference. Return undefined. If you don't return undefined here, it will return undefined anyways. So this is an optional return. Then we can add our fetch data. So const fetch data. And this fetch data will just set loading to whatever silent is. So not silent. And then set loading, we put that back to false. Then if the user ID is given to us, we can await fetch user profile. Then here at the end, we can add a use effect, which works on if the user ID is passed in. Now, usually you do not want to use a use effect with a tracker. I'll explain more on this later, but the gist is if you use a use effect on a tracker and that tracker changes data very often, your page is going to crash because your use effect is constantly refreshing on the changing data. So I highly recommend to not really use use effects on a tracker unless you know that tracker ain't gonna change. And the only time this tracker will actually change is when the user ID or the user logs out and loses their user ID on the site. So in here we can just say if the user ID actually is given to us, we just call fetch data. If the user ID is not given to us, we don't want to fetch the data. We actually want to clear the user profile model because we do not want whoever just logged out to still be able to see their profile. It's not going to work out nicely. And then we want to set loading to false as well. So then down here where the user ID is actually given, we can then just also pass in the user profile. And then finally, let's also delete this logout button here because we'll add a one that looks better later. Okay. So that it does get passed in, it does not really get used, so nothing we can really do with it. But now let's do something to make our routes look a little bit better because this is making me nervous. So inside of components, So we just hide that, components. We can create a new folder called route renderer. And in here we can go index.tsx, route renderer, and Bob's your uncle. Now this will, as it says, render routes. And the routes that it will render will be to make routes look better. Because currently we don't like seeing this white, it looks kind of gross, and we want all pages to follow a similar styling. So that's what route renderer will do for us. So first we'll just extend its props with the basic site props, so we get the user and their profile. Then here we get children, we get the user ID, and the user profile. We get children because we want to render whatever child component is passed into this. For those of you who need a refresher, a children or a child is this. So this will be the parent, and then this is the child. Whatever is passed in here is considered the child and will be passed into the parent component as children. So let's create a layout, which comes from AntDesign, so make sure to import it, with a style of height 100 vertical height. Then in layout, we can add a header, also from AntDesign, and this could of course be layout.header. So if you don't want to import header specifically, you could do layout.header. This will contain things like our navigation. Then we go style, display, flex, and align items center. We'll get back to the header later. Next up we can go layout.content, and this will render the children passed into it. And we give this some styling, padding, 1 rem, 4 rem. This just give it some nice padding, top, bottom, left, right. And then finally we can add the footer, and this will have a styling of text align center. Fun fact, HTML has a native center element you can use to center things. Just in case you never knew this and you also always had trouble with CSS trying to center some things. It still works. I don't know why nobody knows about it, but it works. Anyways, then this will be our site footer containing things like the site name that we defined here. Again, something you might want to get from the database instead. Then just put a copyright symbol in there and then say new date dot get full year to get the current year, so we don't have to update it each year. And we can remove the hello world. This is good enough for now. Let's now actually use this. So we go to app.tsx. So here at where the user is not logged in, we can add it. So here we just say route renderer, import it. Oh, it's actually trying to edit it. Anyhow, route renderer, make sure these are still route. And then you throw the route in there. And then actually route renderer should be here. So inside of route, you use a route renderer to render a route how you want it to look like. Then of course we can go down and we can do the same here. Go like that. Only difference is, here we want to pass in a couple things. This includes the user ID. And this also means that if you wanted to, you could pass in things like the user ID and user profile inside of route renderer to its children instead of doing what we're doing right now. But I feel this is just cleaner. And the user ID will just be our user ID. And then the user profile will be user profile. And then of course we can copy that and then apply it here as well. Now if we were to take a look at our site, you can see it's finally kind of working dark mode like. So here it's at least not destroying our eyes anymore. And of course if you were to make this light theme, so default algorithm, it will also now follow everywhere the theme for light theme. But I think we'll stay dark for now. So pretty much just a basic overview. This layout here is what's making sure everything gets the same styling. So layout applies that dark theme to our whole website. And then just make sure this is minimum height and not height, otherwise you will get that white bar we got. And then here at the bottom we got Meteor microblogging tutorial C 2025. Now I would like to style this header here, which is currently just blank. So to do that, let's go and go into our layout header here. We can create a div with the class name of demo logo, and then just go create a menu, also from design. Make sure to specify the theme should be dark, so it follows the rest of the site's theme. Mode will be horizontal. Default selected keys, and this will be the default key that's selected in your menu. So we will have a couple of them, but for now we can just specify home. And then style, flex 1, and then min width. And then finally, if we save that, we can't really see anything yet because we need to add items here. But now we can add our items. So to add our items, let's go up here and say const items. And this will be of a specific menu item model. So if we go up here, we can just say interface route render menu item extends menu item type, which comes from design. And we just want to add label here, string or react.jsx.element. This is just to extend it because the typing can sometimes be a little bit wonky. And in here we specify it might be this or undefined of array type, meaning each item in the array can either be this model here or undefined. So let's start off with the key, which will contain logo, the label, which can now be a React element. So let's just go image. And this will of course be the logo we added to our public folder. Now take note, if you did not restart your server, you might not see this logo when you try to access it. We can then go src for source /logo.png. So if you use a / here, it will automatically think you're going for the public folder. You just give it a width of 50 and a preview of false. And just make sure to actually import image from design. Now we're saying preview false because we don't want them to be able to click on it and then increase the size of this image so they can view it. Because why should they? It's just a logo. And then just specifying a small width and then the source. Now we put the items here inside of menu, so items. And I'm just going to remove all the undefined from the array. So remove undefined from array, which comes from the utils package, and we'll just pass in items. Then here you'll see we now have a nice big logo. Now you can of course make that if you click this logo, it will take you back to the home page. And to do that, all you need to do is just go on click. You can specify navigate, which we haven't imported, so const location navigate is equal to use location from Vouter. And in here we can go navigate public routes.home.path. Cool. Now if we save that and here we decide to go to /login, which we can. If we click here, you might want to hide this if they're logged in, but it does not matter too much. We can click this and it will take us back to the home page. Now we actually also want one that takes us home, so not all users know that you can click on that to go to the home page. So this will be key home. It will have an icon of home outlined, a label that just says home, and it will take you to the same place. And this will show whether you're logged in or not. It will just be there always. And as you can see, there we go. This is also the default selected key. So this key here, home, is the same one we have here. Now we can check if the user is logged in and if we can see their profile. So if user ID and user profile. So if they're logged in and we have fetched their profile, we can say items.push. So we're adding to that array. The key isn't too important. Style, we can just say margin left. And this will just align it nicely for us. And then the label will be a drop down from design, which will contain an avatar. And this avatar will also contain the user profile name, similar to how it is on the posts where we have these little names here. So here we can just say limit text user profile dot username, and that should be a colon. There we go. And there we go. So now you can see there's like the user profile. Maybe we can stop flashbanging us. There we go. Okay, so it's just a drop down that was giving us issues. So there we go. It's just a nice little icon there. So we know that's where our profile is going to be. So for the avatar, we can just style it a bit. Style, background color, vertical align, middle. The size will be large, and the gap will be 4. To learn more about these properties, you can just check out AntDesign. I'm not going to focus too much on explaining them. Now this dropdown kind of has its own menu. So you can just specify items, which is an array containing our label, which is your profile. Your profile will then be the key. And then we can just also give it an icon, which is profile outlined. And then we can add another one for our logout button. Logout. Logout outlined. That's login. Logout outlined. And then if they click it, we can just go on click meteor dot logout. Simple as that. You might also want to redirect them to a different page if you log them out, but that's up to you. We're not going to add an on-click for profile yet because the user profile page does not exist yet. And in here we can just say trigger should be click. It doesn't need to be click, it could be on a hover or add context menu, whatever that is, but I prefer click, so you physically need to click to get this drop down. Now if we view this page and we click here, we get your profile and logout. And it looks nice. But of course we can then have an else for this if statement. So if their details were provided, then do this. Else if they are not logged in, so else, we can just say items.push key login icon login outlined label login style margin left auto. And then if they actually click it, so on click, we can just navigate them to public routes.login.path. And there we go. So we're not logged in. And I believe you could actually delete this demo logo here. Don't think it will really change anything. No. So you can delete that random div that was there. Anyways, so if we go here and we say log out, it will now go light mode, so it will destroy your eyes, saying, hey, you should be logged in if you want the special features. Don't actually do that in your own website. That's going to be cruel. And then here's a login button that we can use to navigate us to the login page, where we can say, was it nick@gmail.com? Yes, it was. There we go. And now we have Nick here. And you see that hello world, you can also, if you want to, remove it. So if we go like that, then there's no longer a hello world. There we go. Depends on if you still want to see that hello world. And yeah, so we just added a little bit of styling. Plus now we pass in the user profile to everywhere down here. So now we don't need to specifically fetch it per user. Thank you all for watching. I hope you all enjoyed. And I will see you all again in the next Meteor.js tutorial.